क्या हाल है दोस्तों? Everyone's favorite political savant, Archbishop of Mylopur, and my dear friend Abhijit Iyer-Mitra is back on the podcast, joining us virtually today because we talk about Maduro, Trump, the Chinese CCP in Delhi, right? And all the wild things that are happening in the world right now. I mean, the world order is here for a change for sure. We know that. But to this level, बहुत टाइम हो गया है. I've just been reading the tweets. I need the actual quote unquote goss. I need the clarity. I need the reality of what's happening. And my goat here, as always, dropped some bombs. Proverbially, of course. So proverbially, of course, this episode with Abhijit Iyer-Mitra is a banger. और अगर अभी तक सब्सक्राइब नहीं करा है, हर ट्यूसडे एंड फ्राइडे दबा के पॉडकास्ट आ रहे हैं, इंटरेस्ट बेस्ड पॉडकास्ट आ रहे हैं, नुआंस पॉडकास्ट आ रहे हैं, fucking fun. What is it? Honesty, curiosity, joy. That's what I'm about, man. And this episode is exactly like that, with a little bit of classic Abhijitian style of delivery. This episode with AIM begins in 3, 2, 1. Hello, Abhijit ji. Welcome to... Sorry, I should refer to you by your correct name. The one and only, the true and only son of Ayatollah Khamenei. My friend, lots is happening in the world of... I hate to use the word geopolitics because that's what lots of podcasters refer to actual defense experts for as... refer to actual defense experts as ये geopolitics वाले गेस्ट हैं, इनको बुलाते हैं, इनसे बात करते हैं, रूस और चाइना में क्या हो रहा है.
I know. I know.
So what I really want to discuss today is just after hanging this, for me, another thing that's very surprising is the Nobel Peace Prize, which has apparently been given to Maria Machado, the leader of the opposition in Venezuela, right? And now she and Trump are about to meet. Okay. So we know about your admiration for Trump, right? There is certainly this kind of offensive that he's been on where for the first time I'm noticing proper expansionist tendencies कि अब आप बोल रहे हो आपको ग्रीनलैंड भी चाहिए, आप बोल रहे हो मेरा मार्को रूबियो क्यूबा चलाएगा, right? Flirting with the same things and using that White House account as a meme account, instigating that says a lot, right? Now, why would you possibly be... Can you even get away with expanding your country's borders in 2026 when the world's eyes are on you?
You can't, because we've never had a power like America. Britain, even at the peak of its power, was a superpower. America is a hyperpower. Never, ever in human history has this much power of such a myriad kind been so completely concentrated in one hand. There is number one and there is no number two. China might want you to believe it is number two. It is not number two. It is nowhere near number two. It is number three. There is no number two. Okay. The USSR was very clearly number two. And as time went by the 70s, it was very clear that it too was really number three. The only thing that made it number two was nuclear weapons. So if nuclear weapons was your measure of power. Now, there comes a time when all the checks and balances go, when an emperor realizes that there is nothing really stopping the emperor, and they go berserk. Okay. And that's exactly what has happened in the case of Trump. But we also need to remember with Venezuela, this man, he has a very 18th century, 19th century, early 20th century view of resources. He doesn't believe the economics. Colonization did not end because of the goodness of the white man's heart and they realized that, colonization is bad or wrong or anything like that. Bullshit. In fact, colonization started the golden age of, if you want to call it a golden age, the golden age of colonization starts when the slave trade ends. Because that is when the industrial revolution starts. And human labor isn't as important as machine power. What runs machine power? Resources. So you no longer want to control resources. So as long as human labor was important, it was an agrarian economy, the Europeans never penetrated Africa. The Africans were doing all the slave catching and they were selling it only to Europeans at ports. It is only when slavery is abolished that European penetration of Africa begins for resources, because they believed it was cheaper to control and extract those resources, till they realized, till anti-colonial movements and things made it very clear that it is much more expensive to control a colony, better to keep it unstable and allow them to keep exporting to you. I think Trump missed that lesson of the late 20th century. And so he's decided to go and control resources either directly, as in the case of Greenland, or indirectly in the case of Venezuela, which is oil, but people don't realize it's also very rich with other minerals, emeralds, because it's the same belt as Colombia in terms of emeralds and things like that. Uh, Gold, it has more gold than Africa.
Really?
Oh, yeah, it has more gold than Africa. So this is about resources. Greenland is also about resources. Now, Greenland is different kinds of resources. It's about rare earths. Now, remember, rare earths are not rare. It is really the processing of it where, so, it's the same as what petroleum countries do. Petroleum countries will keep raising prices. The moment there is movement towards green alternatives, they tank prices. So all those green alternatives go out of business, and then they hike prices again. Okay. Volvo, for example, was it Volvo or Saab that brought out a car in the 70s when the Arab oil embargo started, the 73 embargo? They brought out a car that would run on vegetable oil.
I've heard about this, yes.
And then oil prices crashed, which is what led to the Shah's revenues crashed, which is why the revolution and shit like that started in Iran, by the way. And that was the end of all the green alternatives that were coming up at that point of time. So what happens is China does the same with the manufacturing of rare earths. It controls rare earth production not because it sits on rare earths, but because it's the only one willing to take the risk, state-owned, absorb financial losses to hike and then drop the prices of rare earths as and when scarcity builds or ebbs and flows. Okay, so he wants Greenland for that. But Greenland, I know for a fact, from what I've been hearing for a while now in DC, had a lot to do with punishing Europe. And punishing Europe, why? It's because of Zelensky. You remember the meeting Zelensky had last January, or was it February, in the White House?
The shouting match in the White
A
House.
shouting match. What European leaders decided to do after that was they were going to protect Zelensky. They weren't going to let Zelensky meet Trump one-on-one. So every time Zelensky would meet Trump, 10, 15 of them would descend.
Right, I did see that. I was very surprised to see several
That,
heads of
that
state
was a
from Europe.
very deliberate tactic. And Trump
Yeah.
understood that he can't force Zelensky to the peace table when all these 10, 15 people would be haranguing him all the while. They would never let him take Zelensky out of the room and get Zelensky cornered. Now, when he goes after Denmark like this,
Hmm.
every European leader has gotten the message. What? That you don't mess around with Trump. He will find something. He's doing it to Denmark now. He'll do it to you tomorrow. Okay. It never underestimate how much of this is punishment for the herd tactics they use to protect Zelensky.
All of this begs the
Remember,
question.
once the
Yeah.
American, if they do something in Greenland, two things happen. First, all their moral grandstanding and sanctions and moral equivalence on Ukraine goes out the window, because America then does the same thing Russia is doing.
Mhm.
In Russia's case, at least it has some ethnic basis. Here, there is no ethnic basis. It's a transparent power grab for resources and security. The second thing is that it brings the entire Article 5, the NATO Charter, into question. So it also erodes Europe's ability to supply Ukraine. And what is Ukraine without the American defensive and intelligence support? Uh, so understand, if they do something on Greenland,
Mhm.
they are going to lose Ukraine.
As a student of media,
If they don't do anything on Greenland, they lose any moral equivalence on Russia, which means Russia gets rehabilitated into the international system. Because you won't dare impose sanctions on America. What will happen to your own financial markets? What will happen to your manufacturing? What will happen to your commodities?
so if I understand this correctly, and as a student of media, doing this will somehow help Russia become the victim, right? Where they were wrongly punished for trying to
They
sanction
weren't
more
wrongly
territory.
punished. They were very rightly punished. Let's be clear about it. It's
Uh-huh.
aggression, it's naked aggression. Um,
But there's more, but there's more. So what I'm trying to get at is the day Maduro was arrested, like you can look at the memes and it's like Maduro sleeping and suddenly Fortunate Son by Creedence Clearwater Revival starts playing. And it's that song which lionizes the American military. It's like Uncle Sam's here. And let's deliver some freedom. Like one of America's biggest strengths is it can carry out all kinds of operations in the name of freedom and democracy. Will it not be able to spin it off like it did to justify attacks against the axis of evil in the time of Bush, right? Can it not do the same thing? Can it not spin it?
all of it, the invasion of Iraq, the invasion, the bombing of Libya, the bombing of Kosovo, all of it was illegal. You did not have a resolution for regime change in Iraq. You still went in and regime changed. You had a resolution for a ceasefire in Libya, which you abused and interpreted as, oh, you can't have a ceasefire till one guy is dead, so let me kill the guy.
Mhm.
That wasn't your mandate. You had zero mandate on Kosovo, for which you bombed Serbia. In fact, the EU made a zones of influence argument, which they reject in terms of Russia claiming the same for Ukraine and the former USSR. And they said the UN has no role in this. This is Europe. We will act in Europe independently because Europe is our. We are the EU, we are Europe, and therefore we need to lead this. And that is what they did in Serbia. Okay, so they made the exact same argument. So there's nothing realistically new about it. What is new is Venezuela wasn't exactly Panama. In 1989, they captured the leader of Panama, another druggie called, that guy was an actual druggie. This guy's not a druggie.
Noriega?
Noriega, Manuel Noriega.
Yeah.
And that, was, well, it was when the Monroe Doctrine hadn't been officially discarded or anything. They tried it again under
Mhm.
Clinton and Haiti when Jean-Bertrand Aristide was overthrown in the military coup by Raúl Cedras. They were going to invade. Raúl Cedras said, oh shit, they're coming in, so I surrender. We will give back power to Jean. Forget that Jean-Bertrand Aristide turned out to be a complete psycho killer in his own right. Different issue. So there is legal precedent, I guess, but it was unprecedented in that you never expected this to happen to a country as significant and populous as Venezuela.
Mhm.
It's one thing happening to. There was another, I think it was Grenada that they invaded, which Margaret Thatcher was super pissed off about. They wanted to thwart a coup. And Grenada was a member of the British Commonwealth, and the Americans invaded it. This was in 84, 85, 86, I forget when. And she was super pissed off and she wanted the Commonwealth to condemn America. She wrote really nasty things to Ronald Reagan and things like that about it. But there was nothing she could do. There was nothing she could do. Because, well, it's America. This isn't Grenada. Venezuela is a very, very significant country. So, it's not the same as India. So, India has intervened to protect Gayoom, who was the president of Maldives in 84, again, 84, 85, or 86, I forget when a bunch of mercenaries tried to overthrow him.
Mhm.
So India can pull it off with the Maldives. Imagine if he pulled it off with Pakistan or Bangladesh.
Yeah.
Different ball game, right?
Mhm.
The biggest issue with a leadership targeting is that it violates the Vienna Convention on Diplomatic Laws. It violates sovereignty because a head of state always has diplomatic immunity.
Yes, but if the Americans impose their own legal loophole, which is that you're no longer you're no longer a president in our eyes. If we deem you a terrorist, thereby we reserve the right to pick you up or quote unquote, instead of using kidnap, capture you, then by that right, they're justified, right? Because what is the Vienna Convention? If if people are asked what is more powerful in the world, they're going to say the US law that applies internationally everywhere as opposed to the Vienna Convention.
Now, see, this is where we're coming to the theory of power, which is that if there is a hegemon who delegates power and maintains some kind of a semblance of international law and order, then decline doesn't happen like this. Decline happens like
Mhm.
this,
Like a slow fade out.
slow, like a plane landing.
Mhm.
If America continues on this path, the counter mobilization that happens means that you go like this and then boom. Right. Uh, that's generally how the theory of power and monopolies and things like that works. And there's lots, to prove that as well. So it is what it is.
Understood. Um, Something else that has really struck me by surprise is the anti-government protests in Iran. Now, you mentioned oil is a significant factor, and let me set some context. So, for the last year or so, I've been seeing the rise of this term Gen Z protests. The moment I see this everywhere, I wonder who's labeling it. I
Yeah.
wonder how this is seeded in media, right? Why suddenly young people uprising in different parts of the world, especially in South Asia, a lot of it happened in our neighborhood. What does that mean? Second, if protests are happening all across the world in different countries, who is seeding these protests and what's at stake? Is it material resources like oil, right? Is it the genuine ire and upset of people against very bad regimes, right? So, using all of that as context, what is the case with Iran, where it's reached a boiling point that protesters are dying, Khamenei is possibly hiding in a bunker, and everyone else is commenting on it potentially? I even read today that last minute Trump stopped a missile strike on Iran. He was considering it.
Not true. That was more a mustering of forces. It wasn't actually a strike on Iran, apparently. Though they're trying to portray it as that the Democratic media is. Because Trump said yesterday, even before the planes took off, that he had credible information that the killings had stopped and all that shit.
Mhm.
Now, we need to understand, these protests these days, they happen for no reason at all. There was the BlackBerry riots in London. I don't know if you're old enough to remember the BlackBerry riots in
I
London.
remember the BlackBerry phone, not the riots related to it.
Yeah, and it was called the BlackBerry riots. Check it up. It was in 2011 or 12, or I forget when. Uh, is the British government some oppressive regime? No.
No.
You keep having riots in France over every damn thing.
Oh,
Cancel.
right, right. So this is sort of like the Arab Spring where they first used social media, except this time they used BBM to instigate the
Yeah,
riots. Sort of were mobilized on BBM. Yeah, 2011.
yeah. So Tahrir Square, which was Arab Spring that replaced Hosni Mubarak in Egypt, was Twitter riots.
Yeah,
So Egypt was Twitter, London was BlackBerry. What do you call the George Floyd riots, the Black Lives Matter riots?
Instagram riots.
Yeah. And so again,
That's fucking crazy. I didn't realize the link between all.
yeah. And see, the thing is, you have a lot of people leading cushy lives with nothing better to do.
Mhm.
There's a lot of room for rioting. Now, we need to understand that there are different categories of riots that happen in Iran. So, the first kind of riots in Iran are when a so-called reformist candidate loses the election. And those are just gripe riots. Now, there is no such thing as a reformist candidate in an Iranian presidential election. There was there were these fuckers, Musavi and Khatami.
Mhm.
presidents of Iran who were reformist president.
Okay.
I forget, it was either Musavi or Khatami who was, my very first visit to Iran was in, again, 84. I don't know why 84, 85, 86 are so important, but they keep coming up
Mm-hmm.
in one of those years. And that year I went both to Iraq and to Iran. And the war of the cities, which is scuds being hurled from Baghdad to Tehran and Tehran to Baghdad. And, uh, my aunt and uncle, they were like, "Oh my God, hide in the bunker, hide in the bunker. There Iraqi scuds coming." And I'll go up and be like, "Man, this is so cool. Whoa, explosions. I've never been in a war zone. So cool." That kind of shit. Uh, anyway, the first thing when I came out of the old airport, the new airport is, I think, IKA. The old airport was Mehrabad.
Mm-hmm.
Is it? Or is it the new airport? Anyway, it was the old
Yeah, I
airport.
can check, huh?
Uh, the first roundabout when I come out of the old airport is seeing three bodies hanging from a crane on the roundabout. Now, hanging, the Iranians have their own very unique version of hanging. There is the long drop method and the short drop method. The long drop method is the British method. The short drop method is the Austro-Hungarian method. What happens in the short drop is it's cruel. The drop is very short. Uh, you kind of you're kind of semi-dead. It kind of cracks your neck, but it's mostly through suffocation that you die. Uh, as opposed to the British long drop method, which just snaps your neck and you're dead even before your brain processes it. Okay. The Iranians do something much more dehumanizing. They tie you to a crane and they slowly lift the crane up. There's no drop so that you're constantly choking. And what happens is you shit your pants, you pee your pants, you're completely dehumanized in the killing process. Okay. The closed door executions that happen aren't like that, but in the 80s, they were doing open crane executions like this. That was carried out. The interior minister at that time was either Musavi or Khatami. I forget which one.
Mm.
So-called reformists.
So the two airports are called the old airport is called Tehran Mehrabad International Airport, THR, and the new one is called Tehran Imam Khomeini International Airport, IKA. Yeah.
So it was Mehrabad Airport. Mehrabad is the one that's close to the reactor, by the way.
Okay.
For the reactor, when you used to land at Mehrabad, you could see the reactor. Um, Anyway, so what ended up well, it wasn't the reactor. I think it was the reactor at that time, but there was one big off-limits research facility kind of thing. Anyway, uh, so what happened was these people were never moderates. It was always, "Oh, I lost the election. I'm not going to accept the election results. Elections were rigged," like what Rahul Gandhi is doing here. Basically, they were all the losers. All the losers are like Rahul Gandhi. Rahul Gandhi could be an acronym: loser slash Rahul Gandhi. They're not losers; they're Rahul Gandhis. So the Rahul Gandhis of Iran used to then have these riots. People would protest. But this was one set. The second set, which were much more serious, were the economic protests. Because of oil price tanking and things like that, and severe sanctions and so on and so forth. I think 2011, 12, or 13, I forget when. It was a cross spectrum protest. And the government is very smart. In order to delegitimize those protests, what they do is they bring out people with the Shah's flag, reciting the Shah's name. And all these royalists abroad get taken in.
Right.
And they start saying, "Oh, yes, 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 global intervention required, this and that." And they're like, "See, these are all foreign agents."
Got it.
So most of these people saying we want the Shah back in Iran, they usually paid provocators of the government itself who are
Uh-huh.
waving the old flag and shouting the Shah's name in order to delegitimize those protests.
Yeah.
These are the two serious protests that you have. The second one being much more serious because it's not gripe driven, it's actually driven by economic necessities. And here there was a severe devaluation that happened in December or January, I think, which is why these protests started off. But remember, when these protests starts off, everybody joins in. The aggrieved candidates rump, uh, the Gen Z rump. Now,
Hmm.
the third category, which is like the Mesa Amini protests, which is the Gen Z type protests, which is urban elite. I would call the Mesa Amini protests a lot like the Shaheen Bagh protests or these JNU Tukde Tukde type protests. Lots of media, politically
Hmm.
fucking irrelevant.
No grassroots support, no real stakes.
Because it's all alienated urban people. People don't realize what a conservative country Iran is
Okay.
once you go out of Tehran and Isfahan.
Yeah.
If you go to cities, so even Mashhad has a very modern face.
Uh huh.
Mashhad also has an extremely conservative face, which is why I find Mashhad the most, I won't say exciting, but intriguing of all Iranian cities. As opposed to Tehran and Isfahan, which are uniformly extremely urbane and non-religious.
Uh huh.
Qum and Shiraz, which are extremely religious, right?
Hmm.
Uh, and Shiraz is a big city. And yet, in spite of urbanization, it's very religious. You can feel the religiosity. Uh, in Isfahan and parts of Mashhad and Tehran, especially, you'll hardly see, except at government protests where you see the Chador.
What's the Shadot?
Chador is their version of the burqa.
Okay. I have a question. So, my understanding of what Iran is has been pieced together by Abbas Kiarostami movies and a few other movies on movie nowadays. And
Don't be Look, this is going on becoming a theme. Movies are not real, bro.
मैं थोड़ी ईरान में रहा हूँ. I'm getting to that. Listen, hear me out. Also framed by Pico Iyer's visit to Iran a few years ago, where he's mesmerized by that. That's a real life account. Can give that. It's a travel account. Something coming out of Iran, and this often happens. This often happens. It started in Facebook many, many years ago. I'm just going to show you an image of the kind of utopic land that Iran used to be before Khamenei came in and ruined everything. Okay, so you see this image?
Yeah.
See this? I'm sure you've seen this, where you see like the women are wearing clothes that show skin. The men look like hippies from American 60s. Apparently, it was a part of, I'm guessing, the Silk Route. You even have women on the beach in Iran, right, wearing bikinis, all of that jazz. Now, the reason I bring
Come
this,
to this photo. Sorry, 1 second, hold.
yeah,
Come to the first in this window where the larger photo is on the right, which says women at the beach.
this one,
Ne- See, uh, other one,
which one? You have to,
the women at the beach with the bikinis, the color photo, not this one.
women
The
in the
one.
beach. 1 sec. This one, right? Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Come to the photo in the middle below that.
This one.
That one. Can you see this?
Oh, wow. Yeah, I do see this. Yeah.
Now, what that particular image is showing you, this is the kind of bullshit of an idyllic Iran that never existed. Okay,
That's crazy.
this was at the worst of times 1% of the population, at best of times 10% of the population.
Acha. Now see what they've done. See what they've done in it. This is
See,
a,
so this is like where some blogger will go to Dharavi,
huh?
show you that this is the real India, dirty, filthy people, no water, no access, no nothing. On the other hand, the other people will go to either Prithviraj Road or Malabar Hills. They'll go into Antilla and film it and say, this is India.
Got it.
Antilla is not India.
Uh-huh.
Just Dharavi is not India.
Understood.
These images, they will also show you the same images of Afghanistan.
Correct. Correct. Of people smoking charas, like basically Western hippies having a blast. Yeah.
Bullshit. This is the classic case of misinformation and propaganda. At the best of times till 1979, 10% of the population would be like this. At the very best, 10% is a wildly optimistic guess. Wildly optimistic. Okay. So this is the classic BS that they try to pull off. They want you to believe this. Why is it that only 5 or 10 of these pictures are iconic?
Hmm.
Just because Greek temples have men and women nude at all times, do you think the ancient Greeks were constantly roaming around Athens and Sparta and Corinth and wherever nude?
There's certainly accounts of orgies and Dionysian ways of the Greeks.
Which, yes, the Eleusinian mysteries and the Dionysian mysteries and things like that, which were events once a year in seclusion, which is why they were called the mysteries,
Uh huh.
right? Uh, it wasn't regular, it was elevated.
I understand.
Same thing, in fact, worse here. Worse here because this is a very small proportion of the population,
Hmm.
which is projected as being the entire population.
Understood. Another question that emerges from that is, okay, so one assumption that many people have in the world about Iran is that because it's a majority of Shia Muslims, uh, they're somehow less likely to be radical, less likely to be fundamentalist, as opposed to the serious and the Wahhabis have made a lot of change, post MBS and whatnot, right? But a common assumption is that Shias cannot be associated with terrorism, or Shias are unable to have the same fundamentalist lines because their religion is slightly different, yada, 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 yada.
It is such a load of bullshit. Uh, who made this argument? Pico Iyer.
Not Pico Iyer. It's just something I've heard friends sometimes on the left often say.
Pico Iyer is too smart to be saying shit like that,
No, no,
but
not Pico Iyer, not Pico Iyer.
not true. In fact, the word assassin is a Shia word. It comes from Hashashum, which was the Ismaili Nizaris up in the mountains of northern Iran in Alamut.
Which is what the game Assassin's Creed is made on. Yeah.
Yeah. So the Hashashum, because the old man of the mountains who was their leader, used to feed them hashish,
Uh-huh.
then inspire them to go out killing people. Uh, those were the Hashashum. And these Hashashum, uh, today, if you look at the Ismailis, the Aga Khanis as they're called, they're the most liberal, open minded people that there are in the entire Muslim world.
Yes, I'm friends with many of them.
Yeah, the only thing the Aga Khan stresses is lead a good life, lead a virtuous life, do good, be known. The fundamentals of the religion are not more important than your humanity.
Hmm.
The fundamentals are there to help you with your humanity. So, when the Aga Khan lands in America, there are people wearing bindis and saris doing garbha dance to receive him, right? This is how the Ismailis turned out. The first sect of fundamentalists within the Islamic Schism were not the Shias, they were in fact the Kharijites. The Kharijites were people who, when was it Ali or Hussein? I forget, Ali, who abandoned his claim to the caliphate
Hmm.
based on the ruling which gave it to Muawiyah.
Mm-hmm.
They said, Ali, you have betrayed us, you have betrayed the succession, and they withdrew and became extraordinary levels of fundamentalists. They
Mm-hmm.
call the Ibadis or the Kharijites. The Kharijites became what is today called the Ibadis. They run Oman. And
Okay.
Oman is the most gentle, peaceful Islam for many, many decades. There has never been an Omani terrorist or any serious Omani terrorist, at least.
Hmm.
There's always one rotten apple everywhere in the world. Uh, ever. Oman has had a Hindu temple for the last 30, 40 years or something like that on
Yeah,
the peninsula.
it's said that the Kharijites, when first they adopted an extreme puritanical view, any Muslim who commits a major sin is an apostate and can and should be killed. They
Yes.
believe the caliph should be chosen purely based on piety and merit, not lineage.
Yes.
Uh,
Anyway, so that is Oman. Now, the Wahhabis, the more you see Indian Muslims
Hmm.
the sheer base level, third rate theology and low level intellect that the Indian Muslim applies in on a theological basis. And you begin to understand why Ibn Wahhab was absolutely right. And Wahhabists will get very angry if you call them Wahhabists. They consider themselves Salafis.
Mm-hmm.
They follow the jurisprudence of Ibn Taymiyyah. Now, Ibn Taymiyyah was dealing 11th, 12th century, I think. 12th, maybe yeah, 13th, 1200s, 13th century. Now, Ibn Taymiyyah was dealing with a very, very difficult question. He saw a lot of the laws of Islam as they applied to Arabs and Arab jurisprudence, which were no longer being properly applied in an urban, hyper urban setting like Persia, Turkey, or the Levant. And at this time, Turks had converted en masse and they weren't really following the doctrines. They didn't understand the doctrines of Islam. They would just take what they wanted and they didn't interpret it as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
So he said, look, Islam can only truly be understood by an Arab because unless Arabic is your native language, you are not going to understand the socio-cultural basis of the interpretation of this.
Hmm.
Now, Wahhab's great innovation was that he said everything needs to be re-innovated. Now, remember, innovation is a very bad word in Salafism. There's shirk and bid'ah. One is kind of uh, idol worship, the other is innovation. But there is constant reinterpretation, which is ijtihad. They do not give over that agency to a preacher, unlike Shias who they give it over to the individual. The problem of terrorism in among Sunnis is in fact too much ijtihad. Because every Tom, Dick, and Harry is allowed to have his own interpretation.
Understood.
On the other hand, the Shia said strictly no ijtihad. You need to have a teacher because these things are too complex. Therefore, you should have an Ayatollah or Hojatul Islam or Hojatul Islam, then Ayatollah, then Grand Ayatollah, so on and so forth. They came up with these hierarchies. The problem then is when you give power, religious power to one man, that man can twist it any way he wants, including into fanaticism. So the fanaticism can come from Wahhabism, just as great moderation can also come from Wahhabism, as the UAE and Saudi Arabia are increasingly showing.
Correct.
Right. Boss, the UAE, you can be in a bikini in a beach today. Nobody gives a shit.
Yeah.
There are more chances. There are foreigner sections in UAE supermarkets where you can buy pork.
It's also the hub of the hottest models in the world, which is insane. Insane.
And you can buy alcohol just so long as you're not a Muslim. But everybody knows every Muslim has a non-Muslim friend just for the reason of buying alcohol.
Right.
And no Muslim can buy alcohol is such a joke of a rule. Like, it's just naam ke vaste.
Uh-huh.
And even if you look at the so-called hijab that their women wear for official reasons, they will wear negligees and things like that when they're not at work. They're really sexy hijabs, man. They're body clinging. They have the sequins and things like that. They're really pretty. They leave nothing to the imagination. They cling as much as any bikini does. Yeah, check them out.
So
Now, so this notion that Shiism doesn't produce fanaticism is completely wrong. South Asia has a very low grade, third rate level of theological interpretation. Because remember, these are all the dregs of society who couldn't have a normal career, who chose a religious interpretation to stay out of poverty and things like that.
Mhm.
And the Arabs don't take their interpretations very seriously at all. In fact, one of the reasons a lot of Arabs look down on India, the same way white supremacists would look down on India for being, oh, curry, you eat with your hand, you smell of spices, etc., etc. It's like, boss, what kind of Islam is this that you're preaching? This is all gobbledygook. You don't understand basic theological fundamentals of this.
I mean, it makes sense if the Quran is a document that was written in erstwhile Arabia, right? Saudi Arabia. I would assume that that's an important factor
Now,
for.
remember, we shouldn't extrapolate Saudi Arabia. Arabia in those days had several different regions. This again is will explain why Wahhabism was reviled and why it was called Wahhabism. And now it's turned into a force for moderation. Now, there were two parts. Well, there are technically three parts. There's the what the Annafud and the Rabal Khali, the empty quarter, which is the dead zone, which is the desert where nobody can live.
Mhm,
And then there is the southern coast and the northern desert.
mhm.
The southern coast was an extremely refined place. Mecca and Medina had international trade networks. Jeddah was an extremely cosmopolitan city. Remember the Queen of Sheba, who ultimately goes and marries King Solomon and no David, and then produces King Solomon as her heir, was from Yemen.
Mhm.
Okay, these were very refined people. This was part of the greater Roman and the greater Egyptian sphere of influence. They were highly. Remember, these are the Arabs, boss, who built Petra. When you've been to Petra in the desert,
I've seen photos of it,
does
yes.
that look like uncivilized to you from any?
Not at all.
These are
No.
very civilized people. Now, the problem with the Us Sauds is they came from the part around Riyadh, which is considered. There is actually a hadith which says, I forget what that part is called, but there's a hadith that says nothing good comes from that except hot winds, hot, odious winds.
Hmm.
But once they gained power,
Mhm.
fine, it took them 70, 80 years, but look how much MBS has softened the entire Wahhabist. They are no longer Wahhabists, they are Salafists. You could say Wahhabist was the non-urban, nomadic, brutal interpretation of the very sophisticated southern coastal prophets work. And
I
now
see.
that the North has become sophisticated, they finally understand what the Southern message was all about. And they've turned from, I won't say Wahhabi heretics, but Wahhabi wrong interpretationists to Salafi right interpretationists.
So it's almost like everyone in the world who's practicing Islam in other countries
In
is
different ways.
is simultaneously doing it not in the way that the southern coastal royals of that time intended it to be.
Because the reality of those southern coastal cities was very different. The reality of Egypt, which was extremely overpopulated at every point of history, was very different.
Hmm.
The Mediterranean cities of the Middle East, the context was very different from the coastal cities because they were bigger cities connected to different trade networks. Okay, which did not, they suffered from imperial conflict, Sassanid or Parthian versus Roman,
Hmm.
as opposed to the southern coastal cities that suffered consistent nomad attacks from northern, the predecessors of the Al Sauds,
Hmm.
technically be attacking the ancestors of the Prophet down in Mecca, Medina, Jeddah.
Wow. And then you've got Iran. Iran takes a different route. Iran moves to Shiaism. At what point?
1 second, we need to remember Iran was Sunni till the 1500s.
Hmm.
Iran was a Sunni country till the 1500s, till the Safavids come to power, and they kill off large parts of the Sunni ulema, and they forcibly convert it to Shiism, and they concoct all these fake stories about how, uh, you know, uh, uh, one member of the Prophet's family married a princess of Persia, the daughter of the last king, and there's a shrine to her and things like that. and how the Prophet actually wanted to Persianize Islam.
Hmm.
So they've kind of conflated it with their own religious myths and national identity and things like that, which is what the Safavids did.
At times, I've seen you defend Khamenei on Twitter. Was that in jest, or do you generally believe that he is somehow good for Iran?
I think you know me well enough to know it's in jest. I don't care what is good for Iran. I only care what is good for India.
Mm-hmm.
If 1,000 Iranians dying saves one Indian life, let 1,000 die. Uh, it's good for India that this regime continues. It is good for India that this regime is contained, isolated, but that it continues.
Why do you say that? Why do you want
Because
unjust
the way it is,
cleric?
status quo is better than an unknowable future, an unpredictable and uncontrollable future. This is the difference between status quoists and revisionists. And I really fear the do-gooder who thinks they are bringing, the old adage that the path to hell is paved with good intentions.
Yes.
That's what regime change always does, more often than not.
Who are the new players in Iran who are vying for the Khamenei's seat?
There are
Other
none.
countries?
There are none. Unlike Libya, where you had a civil war,
Uh-huh.
Syria, you had a civil war. There is no civil war happening out there. There is no credible alternative out there. And if you're the only alternative you have is this playboy who doesn't have any government or policy experience sitting in Los Angeles, flirting with hot chicks in Los Angeles, उससे बेहतर तो मेरे कुत्ते को बना लो ना. My dog is a more valid candidate to rule Persia because the dog was sacred to the old Zoroastrians. Yeah. So you wanted to return to Zoroastrianism, a dog should be made president.
Yeah, what was that whole conversation about
There's
Zoroastrians?
the kind of bullshit they spread that the king was taking it back to Zoroastrianism. Boss, he was a committed Muslim. He is the one who empowered the ulema. Do you know that? The Shia ulema from which Ayatollah Khomeini rose was empowered and enabled by the Shah, who used to keep going for Hajj all the time.
Hmm.
And they threw the accusation. It was Khomeini who threw the accusation of Zoroastrianism at him. Khomeini, the original, not Khamenei, the current.
Got it. Got it.
Because he held that anniversary of his reign in Persepolis, recreating the old Zoroastrian armies and the Achaemenid kings. Now, imagine Pahlavi's son throwing Ayatollah Khomeini's accusation against his father, using it to fool everybody else that Zoroastrianism is coming back. It's not. Only an idiot who's never been outside Tehran or Isfahan would think A, Zoroastrianism is coming back, or B, that this isn't at its core a conservative Orthodox country.
What's the news for the passport bros? Do you think we can finally arrive in Iran? I mean, I have an Israeli stamp.
That said, my support for Khamenei, my basic thing is if the EU and America believe that al-Jolani is a moderate, which is the new president of Syria, is a moderate, then I stand by my line that the Taliban and the current regime in Tehran are highly democratic, they are highly secular, and they are feminists.
Yeah. People often forget that you are a nuclear researcher, so I have a nuclear question. Kim Jong-un has increased missile tests and does not like the US's gangster-like behavior invading and capturing Maduro. And they want to be ahead of the path of nuclear deterrence. Comments, thoughts?
Look, this isn't something Trump has done with Venezuela. What was done with Venezuela, even though North Korea is a much smaller country, because it has nuclear weapons, you're not going to try this shit. But this isn't, everybody wants you to believe that it is Venezuela, Maduro's capture that is triggering nuclearization. No. Nuclearization, the reason North Korea went nuclear is because of all the regime change America started after the end of the Cold War.
Mm-hmm. Across the world, not just in the...
Across the world. They realized that look, Libya gave up its nuclear weapons and look what happened to Gaddafi.
Yeah.
All the security guarantees they gave him, they said, oh, these weren't security guarantees actually.
Mm.
Right? That is why Syria tried to build a nuclear program secretly, which the Israelis bombed in 2008 or 8, 9, 10, 11. I forget when, but it was one of those years that they bombed the Syrian reactor, which was secretly being built by the North Koreans.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, the more America and Europe, and Europe loves to shift the blame onto America. But Europe's own actions in Syria, in Libya, in Kosovo have just convinced everybody around the world who can do it
Mm-hmm.
that nuclearize, do it fast, and do it in a way that's irreversible, but do it so that it's very, very rapid before they come and bomb you.
Understood. I guess which begs the question, something else called the START Treaty. I can't possibly figure out the full form, but it's a treaty between Russia and America around a nuclear strategic partnership. And Trump has recently said that if it expires, it expires. Implications, if any?
Can you repeat?
The START Treaty, START.
Strategic. What about it?
It's like a defense treaty and
I know. Strategic arms reduction, etc. It's a nuclear weapons reduction treaty, huh?
So it's about to expire. Does that have implications for uh nothing at all?
Because when they cancelled a lot of things with Russia,
Mm-hmm.
Russia decided, there's a lot of things we're not going to renew.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's gotten to the stage where START is almost irrelevant now. Because both countries have the exact number of nuclear weapons that they actually need,
Mm-hmm.
uh, which is what, about 1,500 deployed warheads per side or more. They're allowed up to 5,000, I think, but anyway, um, 4,000 something. I forget the exact numbers, but they have about 1,500 operational each. They're very happy with it. So, and there's no movement towards anybody else giving up nuclear weapons. So China, which probably has about 700, Israel, which has about 200, India, which has about 200, Pakistan, which has about, say, maybe 150, 200, North Korea, which has some 20, 30. Nobody's going to give up anymore. The French and the British have their warheads, but they're not deploying warheads. The French, we don't really know if they've reduced or increased whatever their current thinking is at the moment. So, see, these treaties were important in the 70s and 80s, where, everybody was on nuclear hair trigger alert.
And they were on the actual brink of war.
Side had like 15, 20,000 nuclear warheads.
Uh-huh.
1,500 to people who are not on hair trigger alert. It's kind of an irrelevant treaty.
Understood. Abhijit, when we talk about the billionaires of the world and these classic old money families, right? There's a trend I've been noticing where people talk about America as being Peter Thiel's America or Alex Karp's America, where
Hey, what
Peter
America?
Thiel's America or Alex Karp's America, where अब ऐसा होने लगा है कि, or we talk about Adani's India or Ambani's India, in, of course, in tandem with Modi and Shah and whatnot. It seems to me that when I think about what policy decisions a country is making, या फिर कहाँ deals हो रही हैं, कैसे हो रही हैं, there is a very visible and obvious role of the people who have a lot of wealth that used to be very hidden back in the day. So for example, if a country like America invades Venezuela and kidnaps Maduro or something else, a bigger power does the same. How much of these billionaires or these tech giants that actually fund the government or its important projects actively have a say in these things?
Had you asked me the same under Biden, uh, we're refeudalizing, where state power has reduced and baronial, which
Mm-hmm.
what used to be the power of the barons, has increased, which is what feudalism was. It is the loss of central authority. Now, understand this. There was a company called the East India Company,
Mm-hmm.
which was richer and more powerful than the British Empire itself. In fact, it created most of the British Empire. What happens is when industrialization starts, industrialization, which is manufacturing, requires an extremely powerful state. So it is the industrialization that ended the power of these companies and boards and multi-billionaires and multi-millionaires. But then when the information age starts, it requires the state to take a back seat and companies to take a front seat.
Mm-hmm.
So you're going back. See, there's a classic historical pattern repeating in that sense. And it was that same pattern of feudalization that led to, a slow centralization of powers by King John. And then the Magna Carta was signed. Now, everybody thinks Magna Carta was the first charter of freedom. It fucking removed freedoms of the peasantry for the feudal class. It was a pro-feudal thing
Mm-hmm.
that set back freedoms by 200-300 years, which is celebrated as a charter of democracy. That's how propaganda works, you see.
इसीलिए लोग इलॉन मस्क और पीटल थियर से इतनी नफरत करते हैं.
Yeah, but see, they have no issues when their own people do it.
Right.
So as long as that smelly, what was his name? That really smelly, stinky Rasputin type who used to own Twitter.
Jack Dorsey.
Yeah, that druggie. So that druggie fellow, whatever meth addict or whatever he is, as long as he was running things, they were very happy with it.
Yeah, it says that the Magna Carta was
As,
limits on.
as long as that other crystal meth addict Zuckerberg is running Facebook and being liberal, they're super happy with it. See, my issue is these people are hypocrites. They have no issue with corporates with this refeudalization as long as their feudal lords are running it. They don't want somebody else's feudal lords running it.
So ultimately, it's politician and feudal lord working together, right? That's how it works across the world.
We're at a very dangerous stage in human evolution where you have refeudalized,
Mm-hmm.
where corporations are more powerful than states. When they say that about India, I say fuck you, because anybody who knows India knows the state is much, much, much more powerful than Ambani or Adani combined.
Really?
Are you seriously doubting that Adani and Ambani, even if they get together, can't bring down Modi and Modi will teach them a lesson?
I'm willing to understand more, and again, obviously way out of my depth, but from what I see simply all around me, every project has an Adani or Ambani. Every industry, you build a business, and then Adani and Ambani find a replacement business, build a replacement model, and bury you.
Here's the thing, that is not a sign of the shift of power. Please remember this. When the chaebols were in Korea and the big industrial houses came in Japan, it was only 4 or 5 industrial houses that did everything.
Like your Honda, Suzuki, Yamaha.
Toyota, Honda, things like that. Japan had more than Korea, but it was the same pattern. It industrialized, but never mistake. Neither Mr. Honda nor Mr. Toyota nor Akio Morita at Sony ever had the power to replace the government. Neither the Hyundai boss nor the Daewoo boss ever had the guts or temerity to question the president of South Korea.
How is it that we're able to achieve the same for
So
both
don't
Adani and Ambani?
mistake monopolies for political power. On the other hand, in America, we have demonstrable cases where the tech industry brought an end to the first Trump administration.
100%.
Right?
Deplatformed him. Completely
Yeah,
deplatformed him.
exactly. And allowed a whole witch hunt. They basically skewed the metrics so that his message wouldn't get out and shit like that. Went on censoring and so on and so forth. They rigged the 2020 election. They didn't rig the election, but they skewed the even playing field that should have happened. For me, that's a rigged election.
Mhm.
Um,
Then he found his own feudal Elon Musk and won the election, who bolstered him by giving him the biggest platform ever.
I think Elon Musk buying Twitter was the single most important thing that happened to Trump's Twitter campaign, to Trump's presidential campaign.
I agree.
See, that is where the danger happens. Modi did not win his election because of Adani and Ambani. You understand?
Mm-hmm.
Adani and Ambani cannot endanger his continued victory of elections. On the other hand, Rahul is such a dunce that even if Ambani and Adani openly start supporting him, he will still not win the election.
Irrespective of that, how does the central government in India, which is why you said that in India it isn't the case, how does the central government in India or the erstwhile governments of Japan were able to keep their power bigger than the industrial houses? Because eventually you need money, right? And I wouldn't, simplistically put, I wouldn't think that the Indian government is particularly profitable when it has wealth of that's because you need certain things. I mean, you know what I'm talking about, right? Like how
So in Korea, Japan, India, different things. In Japan, it was the demographic collapse and the debt and the fact that Japanese industry moved into different areas. If you remember when we were growing up, Japan was famous for Xbox, Sony, and not Xbox, but
Sega, Sega.
Nintendo, Sega, Sony, TVs,
Hmm.
radios, and that. Where are TVs, Walkmans, radios today? They've all moved to Korea.
Correct, 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 correct.
Japan focuses on a whole different kind of manufacturing right now. So the power balance has shifted. In Korea, it's different. In Korea, what ends up happening is you've had a lot of the old houses collapse and consolidation happen, but there has been a very significant people's movement that the first sign of corporate people actually protest against corporates out there. You know that. So when this head of Korean Airlines,
Hmm.
she threw peanuts at a first class attendant and beat him up. She was arrested, thrown in jail, stripped of all her positions in her. I think it's one of the big houses. I think it's not maybe I don't know which company, but
Mm-hmm.
um, thrown in jail, humiliated, removed from company succession, blah blah bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
When the former president, who's the daughter of a former president, Chundukwan, yeah, was it Chundukwan's daughter? I forget who. Anyway, was found taking corporate bribes. She was immediately removed from office.
Okay.
So people's power keeps that out in this thing. In India, it is the fact that we have not become a manufacturing power, and Adani and Ambani, it doesn't matter how many jobs they create.
Mm-hmm.
Because the rest of the country is overwhelmingly rural, poor, and non-manufacturing, not in their debt. They don't have that overwhelming power, and the prime minister has that maneuver room to counteract their influence.
Mm.
And both of them realize very well that if they cannot finish off the prime minister if they try, but the prime minister can destroy them if he puts his mind to it. Now, had you asked me the same thing, had we been in the coalition era that lasted 30 years from 1889 to 2014, I would have said yes, the Adani and Ambani accretion of power would have been much, much greater.
Did Indira Gandhi and Nehru did not have similar people?
No, nobody dared challenge Indira Gandhi or Nehru because that wasn't a coalition era. You couldn't play one off against the other.
Hmm.
Now, had you asked me this for those 30 years from 89 to 2014, well, 24 years, I would have said, yes, Ambani and Adani are dangerous, or the amount of concentration of power is dangerous. But when you've gone back to a heavily centralized government with an absolute majority, even though it is not an absolute majority right now, it is a de facto absolute majority, whether you like it or not. Because, no, the first party has 240 plus seats. The second party has some 16 or 17 seats. So even if they withdraw, you don't follow below the 272 threshold. So it's a de facto absolute majority. So it is centralized. Whatever federalism that happened before is now not happening. So yeah, I would not. So that is not the case in India, in fact, and it is because people see. This is what Mark Twain used to say: history doesn't repeat; it rhymes. You have to understand what the rhymes are.
My last question to you is something that I think about every single day now that I'm myself involved in a lot of these Twitter fights with people, shitting on Indians. I find that it's the great pastime of the Western world right now to shit on Indians. I don't know if it's a seeded campaign.
Indians brought it on themselves because they realized shitting on Indians gets you massive engagement.
Of course.
So most of it is rage baiting.
Moving beyond, what is an actual threat, a security threat that you see in the next 3 years to our Indian borders?
China,
Is China?
not Pakistan, China. Because look, China's industrial propensity is so much greater than ours. Uh, you know, valor and elan and democracy, they mean nothing when you're up against cold hard industrialization. Which is why it is only in movies that, which you love so much and you think is a parallel for real
I
life.
don't. I just don't have more analogies. I don't read research papers like you.
Fine. But which is why it is only in movies that Chewbacca and Han Solo can defeat the galactic empire. In real life, you don't defeat the galactic.
Yeah. The old principle of geopolitics, might is right, is applicable here. All right. Well, I will say thank you for your time. Thank you for this very elaborate rabbit hole of all things Iran, Islam, and the world. I will see you in Delhi next week. And yeah, people can follow you on Abhijit Iyer-Mitra on Twitter.
It's actually, I follow Twitter and it's Abhijit Iyer-Mitra on Instagram. Yeah.
Yeah. No, actually, you do have your Abhijit Iyer-Mitra as the display name, and the username is Ayerwal.
Yeah, that's it. So it's at the rate of that you have to search for is Ayerwal.
Okay, at the rate of Ayerwal. I still remember the first time we did an online podcast, and I had no idea how to say Iyer. So I said, "Hey, is your name Abhijit Iyer-Mitra?" And then people just went after me in the comments. And it's funny because you're now scratching your ears. Anyway, that I'm at the end of my wits and my jokes. I will now refrain. It's great to hang out with you, bro. See you in Delhi.
Chill, bruh. Come back here and then we have to thoda maza uthana hai.
Let's do it.